April 1945, the East China Sea is black with warships. Off the coast of a small Japanese island called Okinawa, more than 1,500 vessels of the United States Navy and Coast Guard sit at anchor, the largest invasion fleet ever assembled in the Pacific War. Aboard the transports, tens of thousands of American Marines and soldiers wait for dawn. Among them is a division that has never fought a single battle. It was activated only 7 months earlier on Guadalcanal, built from a patchwork of veteran raiders, garrison troops, and green replacements who had never heard a shot fired in anger. On paper, it is the least experienced division in the entire invasion force. Within 6 weeks, Japanese defenders dug into the ridgelines of southern Okinawa will come to regard this division differently, not as untested newcomers, but as one of the most relentless and costly opponents they have faced in the entire war. That division is the 6th Marine Division, United States Marine Corps. This is the story of how a unit formed overseas, never once setting foot on American soil, earned a reputation among Japanese commanders serious enough to be noted in their own defensive planning, and why the hill they fought over, a modest rise of coral rock barely 100 feet high, would come to be remembered as one of the costliest small battles in Marine Corps history. By early 1945, the war in the Pacific had entered its final, grinding phase. The great island-hopping campaigns of 1943 and 1944, Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Peleliu, Guam, had pushed the perimeter of the Japanese Empire back toward its home islands. American planners now needed a staging base close enough to Japan to support the coming invasion of the mainland, codenamed Operation Downfall. Okinawa, the largest island in the Ryukyu chain, sat only about 350 miles from Kyushu. It offered airfields and anchorages that could support that invasion. Japan's 32nd Army, commanded by Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, understood exactly what Okinawa's fall would mean. Japan could not match American naval and air power ship for ship or plane for plane. Its garrison on Okinawa, roughly 100,000 troops, could not hope to stop the landing itself. Ushijima's staff, particularly his operations officer, Colonel Hiromichi Yahara, adopted a strategy of deliberate attrition, give up the beaches without a fight, withdraw into the island's southern hills, and force the Americans to pay in blood and time for every ridge, cave, and rice paddy. Okinawa was not meant to be won. It was meant to be made unbearably expensive. This meant the Japanese defenders had months to prepare. Okinawa's coral limestone terrain was riddled with natural caves, and Japanese engineers expanded these into a network of fortified positions, an estimated 60 miles of tunnels beneath the Shuri Highlands alone. Artillery, mortars, and machine guns were positioned to cover every approach with interlocking fire. Existing American amphibious doctrine, built around seizing beaches and pushing inland quickly, was poorly suited to grinding through a fortified line that the enemy had no intention of abandoning. The old solutions, naval bombardment, airstrikes, frontal assault, could soften these positions but rarely destroy them outright. Every yard of ground would have to be taken by infantry, at close range, position by position. On the American side, the 6th Marine Division was commanded by Major General Lemuel C. Shepard, Jr., a veteran of World War I and the fighting on Guam and Cape Gloucester. Shepard had a reputation as an aggressive, forward-leaning commander, and he would later rise to become Commandant of the Marine Corps. Beneath him, the division was organized around 3 infantry regiments, the 4th Marines, the 22nd Marines, and the 29th Marines, along with supporting artillery, engineer, and CB construction units. The division's corps was not entirely green. Its backbone came from the 1st Provisional Marine Brigade, veterans of the Guam campaign, and its ranks included many former members of the 4th Marine Raider Battalion, an elite unit disbanded earlier in the war and folded into the new division. These men brought hard-won jungle and amphibious combat experience into a unit that, as a formal division, had never fought together. On the Japanese side, General Ushijima commanded the 32nd Army from his headquarters beneath Shuri Castle, the historic seat of the Ryukyu Kingdom. His chief of staff, Lieutenant General Isamu Cho, favored more aggressive counterattacks, while Colonel Yahara consistently argued for defense in depth. Facing the 6th Marine Division directly in the north was Colonel Takehiko Yudo, commanding the Kunigami Detachment, also called the Yudo Force, built around the 2nd Infantry Unit of the 44th Independent Mixed Brigade, reinforced with naval troops. Later in the south, the division would face the 15th Independent Mixed Regiment and elements of the 44th Independent Mixed Brigade along the Shuri Line itself. The 6th Marine Division's introduction to Okinawa did not begin with disaster, but with deceptive ease. On April 1, 1945, April Fool's Day, as many Marines wryly noted, the landing itself was virtually unopposed. Ushijima's strategy of withholding his main strength from the beaches meant that American forces advanced rapidly inland in the war's opening days, seizing objectives in hours that planners had expected to take weeks. But that ease did not last. When the 6th Marine Division and the 1st Marine Division turned north into the Matabu Peninsula in April, they encountered Colonel Yudo's dug-in defenders at Mount Yi-Take, a rugged, jungle-covered massif honeycombed with caves and fighting positions. Early American attempts to seize the peak with conventional frontal pressure stalled against interlocking fire from concealed positions that artillery and air support struggled to locate, let alone destroy. It took several days of costly, close-range fighting, including flanking maneuvers up difficult terrain, before Yi-Take fell in mid-April. The far larger failure, and the one for which the division would become best known, came in May, when the 6th Marine Division was brought south to help breach Ushijima's main defensive line anchored on the ancient hilltop fortress of Shiri Castle. Standing in the division's path, guarding the western, seaward flank of that line, was a low, loaf-shaped rise the Marines would soon call Sugar Loaf Hill. It looked unremarkable, roughly 300 yards long and about 50 to 100 feet high, depending on the approach. The 1st Marines who advanced toward it on May 12, 1945, did not expect much resistance. Company G of the 22nd Marines charged the crest and was thrown back. They charged 3 more times that same day. By nightfall, the company that had started the morning with 215 men numbered only 75. What made Sugar Loaf so lethal was not the hill itself, but its position within a mutually supporting triangle of high ground. Sugar Loaf was flanked to the southeast by Half Moon Hill and to the south by Horseshoe Ridge. Japanese gunners on each of these 3 positions could bring fire down on any Marine unit attacking either of the other 2. A company that fought its way to the crest of Sugar Loaf could be raked by machine guns and mortars from Horseshoe and Half Moon simultaneously, while Japanese artillery observers on Shiri Heights itself, where the 1st Marine Division's advance had also stalled, called down fire on the entire complex from the rear. General Ushijima considered Sugar Loaf the key to his entire western defense, because it was the anchor point that prevented American forces from turning his flank and unhinging the Shiri line from the coast. The Japanese defenders, men of the depleted 15th Independent Mixed Regiment, reinforced repeatedly with fresh troops and even makeshift infantry battalions scraped together from service and support units, treated the hill as a position to be held at nearly any cost. The Marine solution, worked out through repeated, bloody trial and error over the following days, was to attack all 3 high points simultaneously rather than in isolation, denying the defenders the ability to mass supporting fire from an untouched position. Tank infantry teams worked to suppress cave mouths and firing positions at close range, while infantry secured and held the crest through Japanese counterattacks, which frequently came at night. It was not a single technical breakthrough in the way a new weapon or tactic might be, but a grinding adaptation. Coordinated, simultaneous pressure on mutually supporting positions, combined with the willingness to hold ground under counterattack long enough for reinforcement and resupply to arrive. The hill changed hands repeatedly. Marine units would fight their way to the crest during the day, only to be driven off by Japanese counterattacks at night, sometimes multiple times within a single 24-hour period. Corporal James Day, a squad leader in the 22nd Marines, became one of the notable figures of the fight, helping hold a position on the hill against repeated Japanese assaults during the most desperate stretch of the battle. Not until May 18, 1945, 6 days after the first assault, did Sugar Loaf finally fall permanently into Marine hands. 2 days later, Japanese forces mounted a battalion-sized counterattack in an attempt to retake it. The attack failed, and the Marines held. The cost of those 6 days was extraordinary. Over the 10-day period surrounding the capture of Sugar Loaf, the 6th Marine Division suffered 2,662 men killed or wounded, plus another 1,289 classified as combat fatigue casualties, psychiatric and exhaustion cases resulting from the intensity and duration of the fighting. The 29th Marines, the regiment that bore the brunt of the fighting, suffered casualties reported at roughly 82% of its strength, effectively destroying it as a fighting force until it could be rebuilt with replacements. For comparison, the total losses around Sugar Loaf alone were roughly equivalent to the entire casualty count of the Battle of Tarawa 18 months earlier, a battle fought over a single atoll and remembered as one of the bloodiest of the war up to that point. The fall of Sugar Loaf did not end the campaign, but it fatally compromised Ushijima's Shiri line. With his western flank collapsing and Marine forces threatening to encircle Shiri itself, Ushijima began withdrawing his remaining forces south under cover of a rainstorm in late May, abandoning Shuri Castle and consolidating for a final defensive stand near the southern tip of the island. The 6th Marine Division pressed south with the rest of 10th Army, crossing the Asato River and driving toward Naha, the island's capital, which fell to the Marines in the following days. The division's role expanded beyond Sugar Loaf as the campaign wound toward its conclusion in late June 1945. Marine and Army forces cornered the last organized Japanese resistance on the southern tip of Okinawa, near Mabuni, where General Ushijima and General Cho took their own lives on June 22, 1945, as the battle effectively ended. For its performance during the Okinawa campaign, including Yi Take, Sugar Loaf, and the final drive south, the 6th Marine Division, along with each of its 3 infantry regiments, was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, one of the highest honors a U.S. military unit can receive. The cost of Okinawa reverberated far beyond the island itself. Combined American casualties across all services during the campaign numbered in the tens of thousands, and the ferocity of Japanese resistance on Okinawa, an island considered part of Japan's home prefectures, not a distant colonial outpost, became a central piece of evidence for American planners weighing the likely cost of invading the Japanese mainland itself. Military estimates for Operation Downfall, drawing partly on the casualty rates experienced at places like Sugar Loaf Hill, projected the potential invasion of Japan could cost far more American lives than any battle fought thus far in the Pacific. That calculation weighed directly on the decisions made by American leadership in the summer of 1945, in the final weeks before the war's end. For the Japanese defenders, the performance of the 6th Marine Division and the other American divisions on Okinawa validated, at brutal cost, the attrition strategy Ushijima and Yahara had designed. The defenders inflicted casualties far beyond what a garrison of their size might normally be expected to achieve, buying time and demonstrating a level of resistance that shaped how American commanders and policymakers thought about any future assault on Japan proper. For the Marine Corps, the division's brand new formation, forged in combat within a matter of weeks against one of the most heavily fortified positions of the entire Pacific War, became a defining case study in how quickly a mixed force of veterans and green troops could be tested and hardened under the most extreme conditions of close-quarters warfare. The 6th Marine Division's existence was brief. After Okinawa, it prepared for the planned invasion of Japan before the war's sudden end in August 1945 rendered that invasion unnecessary. The division was then sent to occupy Tsingtao, China, where it carried out post-war occupation duties. It was formally disbanded on April 1, 1946, exactly 1 year after the Okinawa landing, making it the only Marine division in history to be both formed and disbanded entirely overseas, without ever setting foot in the continental United States. The battle for Sugar Loaf Hill, however, has endured in military memory and professional education long after the division itself ceased to exist. It is studied as a case example of assaulting mutually supporting fortified positions, of the physical and psychiatric toll of sustained close-quarters combat, and of the difficulty conventional pre-invasion bombardment faces against a well-prepared cave and tunnel defense. Veterans associations, official Marine Corps historical publications, and subsequent military histories, including post-war official accounts written for the Marine Corps Historical Program, have preserved detailed records of the fighting, ensuring that the tactical lessons of Sugar Loaf were carried forward into later training and doctrine on assaulting fortified terrain. The problem that opened this story was straightforward on its surface. An inexperienced division, formed only months earlier, was being asked to help crack one of the most heavily fortified defensive lines Japan had built anywhere in the Pacific War. The answer the 6th Marine Division provided was not a clever trick or a single decisive stroke. It was 6 days of repeated, costly assaults against a hill that Japanese commanders had identified correctly as the linchpin of their entire Western defense, and the willingness to keep attacking, reorganizing, and holding ground until that linchpin finally broke. That is why Japanese commanders on Okinawa came to regard the 6th Marine Division not as green replacements to be brushed aside, but as an opponent whose persistence directly threatened the survival of their defensive strategy. The hill they fought over was small. The cost of taking it was not. Nearly 8 decades later, Sugar Loaf Hill remains a quiet reminder that the outcome of a war can turn on a rise of coral rock barely visible on a map, and on the willingness of ordinary troops, many of them fighting their first battle, to keep climbing it.